Good morning, YouTube. Today we're going to dive into the Ferrari F430.
So are you recording all of the nefarious activities?
If you're new to the channel, my name is Dan, and we are at my dealership, NG Supercars, and we have not one, not two, not three, not even four, but five Ferrari F430s, although technically this is called the 430 Scuderia, so it's not got the F on it. But we're going to go over some of the interesting options and differences between these cars, what things make them worth more, what things make them worth less. Hopefully you learn some more about the Ferrari F430 that makes you a better educated buyer if you're looking to buy one. If not, when you're walking around and you see one, you'll just know more about them. This is a 2007 Ferrari F430, and it's got some interesting options that do make it more valuable than the typical Ferrari F430. Well, this one's in the middle of being converted, so the interior is, well, over there. And as long as we have the interior out, let's point out something that is an option, which is this is the Daytona seat. So there's a couple different seat options on the Ferrari F430, and the Daytona seat is specific by having these stripes. Now the stripes can be various different colors. In this particular example, it's the tan with the blue stripes. So another thing that you can option on these seats is deviated stitching. You could have it on different colors. You can also have piping, and I don't believe any of our cars have the piping, so I can't really show you that. The Daytona seats is a pretty desirable option. They're kind of more of a comfortable seat. They're not as sporty as the carbon seats, but they are very comfortable and they still hold you in place pretty good, and they look really cool with those little stripes on the inserts. You have the carbon fiber dash vents, you have the carbon fiber instruments down there, so you can see there's carbon fiber on that dash vent as well. We also have the upgraded stereo system, so you've got the bigger, I guess they're kind of like subwoofers or whatever. And of course, notably, this is a Spider, so the Ferrari F430 Spider. They made almost half of the cars were Spiders. As far as value on the Spider versus a coupe, in the Ferrari F430, it seems like the Spiders bring just a touch more money, although that's not always the case. It really has almost more to do with condition than anything. This car has the carbon ceramic brakes, which are a very expensive option and actually one of my favorite options on these things. And then moving back to the engine bay, these are actually aftermarket carbon fiber panels. Now you could get carbon fiber intake boxes from the factory and a carbon fiber water overflow tank. Pretty uncommon on the F430. There's also the Ferrari Sport exhaust right here. So if you notice on this particular example, the valves were pulled, so you can see the vacuum lines were pulled off and capped. So that means that this car would be loud all the time. This particular example has the F1 system still in place right here. So you've got the F1 pump, accumulator, and the F1 fluid reservoir. Now if you notice, this is the little F1 logo. If something goes wrong with it, that you'll see that little logo appear on the dashboard in red. That's when stuff goes wrong. But soon that will all be taken care of because this will be converted to a manual. Now you could get a carbon fiber rear diffuser. Where is the diffuser on this thing? It's laying around here somewhere. I don't know. Oh, look at over there. We have panels over here. Carbon fiber diffuser sitting on the ground. And you got the carbon fiber engine bay panels. Now again, those are aftermarket, but you could actually get those from the factory as an option. They produced about, from what I understand, somewhere around like 17 or 18,000 Ferrari F430s, of which only about 1,500, about 10% of them were in manual. So the manual transmission option is a huge increase in value, about $100,000, certainly $75,000 to $100,000 increase in the value of the car, which is why, of course, the conversions are such a great deal because you can convert a car starting at about $20,000. If you're interested in getting your car converted, reach out to us, sales@normalguysupercar.com, and we can get you set up and do this to your 430, and you can enjoy it as a manual. Moving along, actually, we're going to skip the Scud for now. Let's come back to it at the end because it is quite a bit different. So this particular example is Josh's car. It's an 05. He's got it slammed on the ground. So it has aftermarket suspension and he's lowered it quite a bit. This is not the factory height. Oh, I also should point out he's got the challenge wheels. So that was an option. The Ferrari challenge wheels you can see right here is kind of the classic double 5-spoke star wheels that are on the 430. This is probably the most common wheel you're going to see on the 430. Challenge wheels do look pretty cool. They have a lot more spokes, and I guess they're supposed to be a little bit lighter. Now Josh's car, if you notice, has one of the coolest options that you can get, and it's also one of the least common options on the regular 430, which is the carbon seats. So these seats really hold you in place. The back panels of them are carbon fiber, and they are extremely lightweight. They're awesome and rare and worth a lot of money. These seats are probably worth about $15,000 if you were to rip them out of this car and just sell them on their own. Also, another amazing option that Josh's car has that is, again, pretty rare, the carbon fiber steering wheel. So you can see it's actually got carbon fiber, a little red dot or a little red line right at the center. Very, very cool. So there's all sorts of various options on materials on the insides. You could get Alcantara leather, you could get deviated stitching, you could get different headliners, all that sort of stuff. This particular car, just a Nero interior, it's the black interior. Looks like the stitching actually might be kind of like a bluish color. It's kind of hard to see. That's pretty cool. So again, you could get different color stitching. Center console, center vents. Looks like it's, oh yes, this one has the carbon fiber instrument panel. So it's kind of hard to see because it's dark, but that instrument panel is actually carbon fiber. That's pretty cool as well. Now, moving on to the back of this car. Oh, I don't know if that fire extinguisher was factory or not. I believe it actually is. And that was an option. You could get a fire extinguisher installed from the factory. Now, moving on to the engine bay. This is a pretty typical engine bay. You can see it's got the composite material, so composite intake boxes, composite side panels, composite overflow reservoir. Do have a Valvetronic aftermarket exhaust. Now, in my opinion, if you buy a 430, one of the most important things to do is get an aftermarket exhaust. We'll fire up the different cars. You can hear different exhausts of different configurations. We'll discuss which exhausts are in what, and you can kind of hear them briefly. Composite rear diffuser as well. And Josh actually added the Morimoto, I think they're called, aftermarket taillights. Now, if you know, the Ferrari factory taillights are prone to vibration, and then the studs that kind of mount them break apart and fall apart. Next thing you know, the taillights are falling out. Typically see them get epoxied or somehow fixed in various forms, but this is actually a really good solution. It's made of different materials, so they're not as likely to break, and it has 4 studs instead of 3. So it holds it in place a little bit better. Pretty expensive, but honestly, they cost about the same as just replacing the regular taillights. And these are LEDs, so they're much, much brighter. Very cool lights. I'm a big fan of them. I think that makes the car look a little bit more modern. It brings a little bit more sexiness to the rear end of this car. You could get carbon fiber engine panels or engine bay vents, I guess that's it. We have aftermarket ones on the Spider over there. Moving on to this car, you can see, again, the double 5-spoke wheels, very typical. Carbon ceramic brakes. Ah yes, Josh has the carbon ceramic brakes as well. This one has an option that we haven't seen yet on the other two 430s, which is it's got the Challenge grille. So a carbon fiber rear grille. It was optioned a lot more heavily in the later cars. So you'll see it very commonly on the 07, 08s, and 09. Not as common on the 05s and 06s. I don't know why, it just is. Now this one, again, Daytona seats, but they're just tan. There's no insert color. And it doesn't appear to have any sort of color on the stitching. Got the carbon fiber steering wheel, got the carbon fiber instrument cluster, carbon fiber vents, you've got the carbon fiber center console. You got this section in carbon fiber, and there was different options and configurations of this particular center console. This one's got like a carbon fiber panel. Sometimes this entire piece where this is currently leather, you'll see the entire thing made out of carbon fiber, which is pretty cool. I actually really like that option. It's not as common. This one's been converted to a manual. This actually has an aftermarket Ferrari installed Clarion stereo. So those of you that wanted to get a modern stereo, but you still want it to have kind of Ferrari originality, there you go. Ferrari will actually install a proper Ferrari stickered Clarion stereo. Basically, it's just a Clarion with a sticker on it. Now you can get that with the reverse camera and everything, which was not available on the 430. So there were no reverse cameras, there were no axle lifts. That were not options on this car. Oh, I totally forgot. We got to go over another option. So we've got the Scuderia badges right here and right here. So believe it or not, that is an option. That is not by default. So this blue 430 over here does not have the shields. There you go. So some people love or hate that. It kind of gives it a little bit more of a clean look. Moving on to the last one over here. So again, another 430 Spider. This one is an 05. You can see we have the regular steel brakes. We've also got the double 5-spoke wheels. These ones have been, I don't know if it's powder coated or painted black. I think it looks pretty good. Again, Daytona seats with the tan inserts, carbon center console. You got the carbon fiber air vents, carbon fiber instruments. It does not have the carbon fiber instrument cluster. I can see it from here. So that was an option that was not put on this car for some particular reason. Oh yeah, I should point out, when you see the 05s, 06s, and 07s, the 07s have a different badge right here. You can see it's got this little championship thing. It says world champions in 2004 and blah, blah. We go over here to an 07 and look at that. 60 years of Ferrari. So it's got a different badge. It's pretty cool. So there's little tiny things like that to note on different years. One thing to point out is that the halfway through the 07s, so not the early 07s, the late 07s actually got a different transmission computer. There's also different instrument clusters. There's different things that they changed throughout the production of this car. It's little tiny stuff like on the instrument panel, some of them actually have a little P for the parking brake and others actually just say brake. Just weird little things like that. It's just stuff that you notice over time when you see hundreds and hundreds of these cars. Everything else about this particular example is pretty standard. It does not have the challenge grille. It does have the sport exhaust. So you can tell the sport exhaust because it's a little bit smaller of a can. There's also another variation of the sport exhaust where you've got mufflers tucked in under that panel and under that panel, and then you won't see this big muffler right here. It's actually like a to be rebadged as a Ferrari product. It's kind of weird. So it's a to be exhaust called the Sport Ferrari exhaust or something like that. This one again has been converted. It's for sale. Great shape. 33,000 miles on it. 34,000 miles. We got 38,000 miles, and then the blue one over there only has 8,000 miles. So then you've got the 430, the regular 430, which I want to point out is the F430, I should say. And then you've got the Scuderia, which is actually not called the F430 Scuderia, it's called the 430 Scuderia. So they dropped the F. And there were actually a few other variants of the Ferrari F430. There was like challenge cars, there's special edition cars, some other stuff. There's actually like 5 or 6 different variants of the F430, but the two most common are the regular F430 and of course the 430 Scuderia. And I want to point out that the 430 Scuderia, if it's a convertible, is actually not called the 430 Scuderia, it's called the 430 Scuderia 16M. Those are extremely rare. They only made 499 of them. The regular 430, they made about 1,400 or 1,500 of them. So what makes the 430 Scuderia so special compared to a regular F430? Well, for starters, you can see it's got a completely different front bumper. So it's got much larger air intakes. You can see it's kind of been squared off versus this kind of roundish oval shape. It's also got these much larger, I don't know, blow-by vents or whatever you want to call it right there with a little, I don't know, shark fin in the middle. You can see that. It doesn't exist there. There were wheels that were specific to the 430 Scuderia. So these are lighter weight wheels. All the Scuderias came with carbon ceramic brakes. It was standard. You couldn't option those out. So if you see it converted to steel that is not factory, and beware, that's usually a sign that the car has been tracked. The headlights in the Scuderia, you could get them in carbon fiber. So you can see the inlays in there. It's kind of hard to tell. It's actually carbon fiber versus these are just composite. Now, one of the downsides of that is the Scuderia gets a lot of off-gassing because of the carbon fiber in there. And so you get these little dots. And that's super, super common on these things. Apparently there's a way to fix them where you heat it up, separate it, clean the inside of it. The stripes are an option on the Scuderia. So these are not by default. So you can actually see Scuderias that don't have the stripes. Front splitter can be optioned in carbon fiber. It actually can be optioned in carbon fiber on the regular 430s, but it can be optioned as carbon fiber as well on the 430 Scuderia. The side view mirrors are carbon fiber. And if you notice, they no longer say F430 right here. So if you go over here to the regular F430, you can see all the F430s, only the driver's side mirror, not the passenger. So you can see the passenger mirror, nothing, blank. I don't know why they did that, but driver's side mirror, F430. Passenger mirror, too bad, you don't get anything. Now this one's a little bit harder to tell, but this right here, this little dovetail is actually much, much larger on the Scud than it is on the regular 430. So it sticks way up, comes up probably an extra inch or so. You can see it's not quite as pronounced on the regular 430. That is unique to the Scud. And of course, it does have the Challenge grille, same as the option on the other cars, but it came with this 430 Scuderia badge that was specific to this car. Now, a huge difference is the rear end of this car, rear diffuser. Now you've got a specific exhaust to the Scud. It's unique to the Scud, where it's got the two exits that would come out through what would be the bumper area on a regular 430. It has a much more aggressive, much larger rear diffuser. And this diffuser actually is unique to the Scud. There's no other 430s that had it, Scud and a 16M, and they've got all this ventilation. So it's designed to move out a lot more of the air and get this thing cooler. I mean, the theory is that you're supposed to be driving this hard and racing and all that sort of stuff. The vents on the Scud, on the engine bay lid, are unique to the Scud. These are totally different. If you notice, it's basically entirely made out of mesh versus this mesh kind of composite amalgam. Also of note, this is glass, and on the Scud, this is Lexan. And you have these little carbon fiber braces that are going across. You got two of those. Those don't exist on the regular 430. Not there. The side skirts are actually a bit different. So you can see the air scoop kind of bulges out, and look at here, it's just flat. Also, the actual sill itself sticks much further out. So you can see if I look right here, it's sticking out like this, versus the regular 430, it disappears. So it's a much larger side skirt, but these vents are the same up here. Everything else about the body is effectively the same. All right, so opening up the engine bay. Now, people don't know this, but because they always pretty much had this option, is the side panels in carbon fiber is actually an option. It is not a default on the Scud. So you can see these in composite. In fact, if you notice this one, side panels are in carbon, but the front panel is in regular composite. So they kind of half-assed this one. They did it partially carbon, partially composite. I don't know why. Now, the Scuds did have carbon fiber air boxes, and it did have carbon fiber intake manifold. I don't know what you call that. The cap of the intake manifold, and it had a carbon fiber cover over the overflow tank. Now, those are all factory options. The unique thing about the Scud, or I should say two of the unique things about the Scud, is it actually has a different engine setup. So it's basically the same F430 engine, so it's still the same 4.3 liter V8, but it does have unique heads. It does have a unique intake manifold. It does have a unique exhaust. So it's completely different exhaust. The heads are actually a totally different design. If you look at the heads, if you ever for some reason are in there, they actually have some slight differences. So the way the exhaust ports are set up, there's actually like a tab for lifting the engine on the heads on these. It's just slight little tiny variations. And of course, it does have a unique ignition system. So it's got an ion ignition system. All of those things combined, they increased the compression ratio of the engine and bumped it up about 20 horsepower. So the Scud sits at about 510 horsepower. The regular 430s sit at about 490 horsepower. So just a little bump up in power, 20 horsepower. It also gained a little bit of torque, and it revs a little bit faster. I'm not sure if that's because of the ignition system or the compression or what. The other thing is, of course, the transmission is actually unique to the Scud. So the transmission is called the SF2, the Super Fast 2. So it's basically the same transmission, but they modified it in a few very small ways. The shift box has a different configuration. The software itself was tuned a little bit differently, and the transmission has apparently like double the synchros, also a lower gear ratio, or I should say, I guess it's a higher gear ratio, which makes it have a lower top speed. So they wanted to be able to accelerate a little bit faster, but they lowered the top speed because theoretically, if you're racing, you're not as concerned about going 210 miles an hour as you are getting to 180 very quickly. But the F1 system is basically the same. The hydraulics, the pumps, and all that stuff, they're actually interchangeable with the later versions of the Ferrari 430. So it's got the same basic 301 TCU, but it does have different programming. So the other interesting thing about the Scud that makes it really special, in my opinion, is the interior. So if you notice, we've got carbon fiber panels. You've got this little tiny embedded door pull. You've got like a little aluminum door release right here, a side pocket. So you don't get any sort of glove box. These seats are actually unique to the Scud. So I believe it's the same basic design as the later carbon fiber seats that they put in like the 458, but these at the time were the first time they did these seats in the Scud. You could option it with leather or Alcantara. It has this kind of mesh, and the reason they do that is I guess it's supposed to breathe better because you're gonna be sitting there racing and it's gonna be hot and whatever. There is no carpet in the Scud, so you got this diamond plate floor panels. Pretty awesome. No sound deadening really, so it's very loud in here. You can see the back of this is all carbon fiber. You could still get the stereo option as this car has. This one actually has the leather back panel and the leather interior option. You had a unique center console to the Scud. So this carbon fiber console is specific to the Scud. And of note, the Scud actually has a different drive mode right here. So you have a bumpy road mode. This was not something that was available on the 430 at all. And the reason is they actually changed out the suspension components a bit. So they had kind of the predecessor to the 458 suspension in the Scud. If you notice, the Manatino switch on the steering wheel is also unique to the Scud. So you've got wet mode, sport, race, CT off, and then CST off. So this was not available on the regular 430. Carbon fiber shift paddles, carbon fiber center steering wheel, and shift lights embedded in the steering wheel. So those, again, unique to the Scud. It's kind of funny because when you look at it, it's like they just kind of cut a hole and glued in the lights. It did have black knobs for the AC controls, which were unique to the Scud. On the dash right here, it says 430 Scuderia. So that, again, unique to the Scud. No glove box, they got rid of it. You don't need that if you're racing. And it has these unique gauges to Scud. It's got kind of a strange font. Another thing is when you're driving the car, it actually says like F1S. So it's got like letting you know, hey, it's the super fast transmission. I don't know why they did that, but they did. Lots of unique things about the Scud. So it dropped 300-ish pounds. And of course, with the extra horsepower, it means this thing is a good amount faster than a regular 430. All right, so for a clean 430 in the current market, this is late half of 2024, so Q4, Q3 and a half, something like that. You're talking about, for the coupes, anywhere from like 120 to 140,000 for a clean example. With, you know, obviously it's mileage and option dependent, and then the convertibles are pretty similar, maybe about like $5,000 to $10,000 more. Now, if you have a manual transmission, again, it increases the value of the car probably about $75,000 to $100,000, $50,000 at an absolute minimum. And again, depends on condition, repair, all that sort of stuff. Daytona seats don't really bring a lot more value, but they certainly bring a little bit more value over their standard seats. I don't have a car with the standard seats. If I did, I would show you. It's got kind of like a zigzag pattern in it. They usually don't have the electric stuff as much either. So that's another option, is you could have the electrically controlled seats or not. If you got the carbon seats, there are no electrical controls on them. It's just all manual stuff. It's, you know, much lighter. The carbon fiber seats do add a huge premium, probably $5,000 to $10,000 on the sale price of the car, typically. Carbon ceramic brakes probably bring a little bit of value to the car, maybe a couple $1,000s. I'm gonna say probably around like $3,000. Carbon fiber center console, carbon fiber steering wheel, all those things, again, bring a little bit more value to the car, $1,000 here, $1,000 there. Carbon fiber steering wheel is probably worth about $2,000 on average in an increased value of the car. Now, if we move on to the Scuds, so the Scuds typically are about, right now, $100,000 to $150,000 more than an equivalent 430. So Scuds are in good shape, running around the $300,000 mark, plus or minus, let's say $25,000, depending on miles. So high mileage Scuds could be in the low 250 range. Low mileage examples we've seen go for as much as like 350. But if you have a 16M, because they only made 499 of them, one just sold for $650,000. They carry about a $100,000 premium on the Scuds. So they are worth a lot right now, especially the very clean low mile examples. Now, mileage is kind of the biggest factor on the 430. If you have somewhere in the $0 to $5,000 range, and obviously if you're like at $1,000, it's a huge premium. But let's just say $5,000, it carries probably about a $20,000 premium. 10,000 miles probably carries about a $10,000 premium, and then once you get to about $20,000 to $30,000, 20 to 30,000 miles, it probably has no real premium. And then once you start exceeding 30,000 miles, it probably, 30 to 40,000 miles, I would say, it actually starts decreasing the typical range on the car, but it slows down a lot. So the very low mile examples have the highest premium, and it kind of trails off like this and then flatlines. So you can see there's a lot that goes into finding the 430. Now the interesting thing is that the 430 didn't have nearly as many options as they started doing in like the 458s and 488s in later cars, where you could get all sorts of crazy stuff. But they did have a lot of the customization stuff, so you once in a while will see very interesting like quilted patterns on the headliner, or all sorts of different stitching. Again, we didn't have any with the piping on the seats. The piping looks pretty cool. Usually it's a different color. Like I've seen very common, you'll get the tan, Rosso Corsa exterior, tan interior, and red piping. I think that looks really cool. Sometimes you get like the red Daytona inserts. All sorts of different variations that make the cars unique and cool and interesting. Now, as long as we're here, and we've got 5 different cars, although we can't start that one's torn apart, but we can start 4 of the 5. So let's go through, we'll start the cars and tell you about the different exhaust things about each one before we start it. Okay, so this 05 has the factory exhaust, no modifications, but it does have a valve controller, so the valves are going to be open. And that's it. So this is a factory exhaust, valves open. This is the factory sport exhaust. So this one is an 07, and it has aftermarket headers. The rest of the exhaust is factory. So you can see much louder, a lot more like a snap and crackle to it. This has a DME tune, so it's a bit more of an aggressive tune. Gives a little bit more of that pop and aftermarket pops and bangs sound. Here we go, Josh's car, 05, with the full Valvetronic titanium exhaust. Okay, and finally, a 2008 430 Scuderia full Valvetronic exhaust, the piece de resistance. Well, I hope this helped you learn a little bit more about the 430s, the different variations, different options, different values, and all that sort of stuff. So hopefully, if you did like this video, please like, share, and subscribe. Hit the notification bell, and check out our website, normalguysupercar.com. There you can buy parts and services for these cars. And our dealership, NG Supercars, which is where these cars are actually for sale. So if you'd like to make an offer on one of them, send us an email, sales@ngsupercars.com. But we appreciate you guys' support that keeps this thing going. We'll see you guys in the next video. We're going to be doing a lot of cool car stuff. You're going to want to stay tuned. It's going to be sweet.